Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of our Heroes of Energy League Learning series. Now, we have a fantastic lineup today for what I am sure is going to be an exciting discussion. But before I introduce our guests and our hosts, some quick housekeeping notes. Now, we are using Microsoft Teams and YouTube for today's session. For our viewers on YouTube, please feel free to add your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll do our best to raise them in the discussion, time permitting. So my name is Lawrence Arjun. I'm the CEO of the Heroes Foundation, and it is an honor for me to introduce our guests today. Now, all our guests play unique and very important roles in Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector. Senator Franklin Can is a petroleum geologist by profession, having spent 20 years in the local and international energy sector. Now, we know him as the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, but over the years, Senator Can has also held the position of Minister of Works and Transportation and the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government. He has also served as president of the Geological Society of Trinidad and Tobago on two occasions and as director of the Water and Sewerage Authority and as chairman of the National Petroleum Marketing Company Limited. Minister Khan studied geology and geography at the University of West Indies in Mona, Jamaica, and received his MBA from the Arthur Lockjack School of Business in Trinidad. Also with us today is Mrs. Penelope Bradshaw-Niles. Now, Mrs. Bradshaw-Niles is the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. She has over 20 years professional experience at the ministry and in the public service in Trinidad and Tobago, which also includes her holding the position of permanent secretary at the Ministry of National Security. Ms. Bradshaw-Niles holds a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering and a Master's of Science in Engineering Management from the University of the West Indies and an MBA in Petroleum Management from the University of Kansas. Now, Ms. Bradshaw-Niles is immensely knowledgeable and experienced in the energy sector of Trinidad and Tobago, having worked on plans and policies and initiatives that all contribute to how the energy sector is regulated on behalf of and in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Our third guest today is Joel Monty Pemberton. Now, he has been in the upstream energy industry for over 20 years, having started his career in Ernst & Young, working in London and Trinidad, primarily on the BP Global account. Now, Monty is the first Trinbagonian to successfully list a Trinidad and Tobago company on the London Stock Exchange, and he did that when he was 38 years old. Now, Monty was appointed the CEO of Trinity Exploration and Production at the age of 32 and successfully grew the local oil-producing company fourfold within 5 years. Now, Monty left Trinity in 2015 and founded De Novo Energy, Trinidad and Tobago's first local upstream gas production company. Now, under Monty's leadership, De Novo moved from being a startup to producing gas from the offshore Iguana field within 33 months. Monty is the chairman of the Heroes Foundation and was actually the organizational champion for piloting the first corporate workplace Big Brothers, Big Sisters mentorship program in Trinidad and Tobago in 2013. Our youth hosts this afternoon, Oba and Faith, are both in our Heroes Development Program. Oba, Faith, before we begin, how about you tell us a bit about yourselves?
Hi, my name is Oba Highland. I'm 15 years old. I've attended Belmont Secondary. I love to cook, I love to dance, I love to learn about new stuff. What I learned in the Heroes of Energy is that many people of the energy sector are very persistent, determined, motivated.
Hi, my name is Faith Martin. I'm 14 years old and I am in Form 3 and I also attend Belmont Secondary School. My hobbies are dancing, roller skating, and spending time with my family. From these sessions, I have really enjoyed the inspiring stories everyone had to offer and how they have overcome challenges through life and that they found a way to make it to where they are today. Oba and I are very excited to hear about the stories of all our guests today.
Yes, we are. I really am looking forward to learning about all of you. First, Mr. Minister, I would like to know, can you please explain to everyone that is watching, what do you do and how is it important to Trinidad and Tobago?
Okay, thanks a lot. And actually, I'm actually quite surprised that I was going to be interviewed by such young people. Somewhere in my mind, I didn't ask all the questions, and I really thought it would have been 18 and 19-year-old upper six kind of thing. But I mean, the way you all started, I mean, I just want to say this, that in recent times, I've become so impressed with the youths of Trinidad and Tobago. And you all are no exception. And there's a quote I attribute to myself, and so I don't want to blow my own trumpet. But I always say that civilizations have progressed this far for one reason and one reason only. It is only because the next generation always supersedes the accomplishments of the previous generation. And no matter how good we think we are, I always tell my children that you will do better than me. And my children are supposed to tell their children, and they already have children, so I'm a grandfather, that the same has to go that way. And that is the foundation on which societies are built. There's a lot of challenges in the youth sector. We know what they are, but sometimes we do not see the bright side of it. And I'm being exposed now to so many young people, and so many young people who have talent, who have ambition, who have skills, and I know they will do that. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of my experiences with you and to speak to you on a one-on-one basis. So having said that, what do I do and why it is important? Well, simply put, you all know from your high school that the energy sector not probably is the most important sector. It is the most important sector in Trinidad and Tobago. It has carried this economy for decades. We have been able, as a country, to enjoy a certain standard of living that few other developing countries have been able to attain, and largely because of the wealth that has been generated from this sector. Whether the wealth was used in the right way or in the wrong way or somewhere in between, that's a topic for debate. But a lot of the things we enjoy today in Trinidad and Tobago that we take for granted, and I will explain some of that later on, has come out because of revenue that this country earned from both oil and gas. As Minister of Energy, I am what you call the regulator of the industry. There's something called the Petroleum Act, which governs the operation of the industry. And in the act, it quotes the minister as the regulator. So a lot of contracts, documents, and stuff, it cannot be executed without my signature and with the work and the support of the public service staff headed by the permanent secretary. Also, as minister and with the cabinet, I, through the cabinet, have the responsibility for determining what national energy policy is. What do we do with our oil and gas? The type of investments we attract, the type of investment that we don't want, the type of companies we want to attract, the type of taxation we impose on these companies to generate the revenue for the country. So, put another way, it's a pretty important job. What we do or what we don't do has some serious impact on the nation. As you all know, recently there have been COVID, and even before COVID, the price of both oil and gas has been falling. And because of that, the revenue has been falling. And if the revenue has been falling, it means what you are accustomed getting, you cannot get any more. So if your mother and father is working for $10,000 a month, and they come one day and tell you, our salary has been cut to $5,000 per month. You as the child have to know you cannot expect the same thing you were expecting yesterday. And that is what the country has to start to understand now. And everybody still demands my share. Everybody wants their share, and their share should be proportionate to what they are accustomed having. And it just cannot work like that. Because at the end of the day, somebody has to pay the bills. And when we run a country, just as when you run a household, you have to have strategic investment. So your parent, with their $10,000, was saving $2,000 a month for your university education. Okay? They were spending $1,000 a month on entertainment. Now, with the cut in salary, what do you want them to do? Do not continue to invest in your long-term education, or should they cut out the entertainment? The entertainment will bring some instantaneous joy to you. But you have to understand in planning the policy and the long-term future of your family. Obviously, as the child, you wouldn't want to see your future go down the barrel. So that is the same way a government has to run a country. However, there are immediate needs that must be attended to. You must have food on the table. Okay? You must have clothes, you must have the basic utilities, and now a basic necessity of life. Long time it used to be food, clothes, and shelter. Now it's food, clothes, shelter, and Wi-Fi. So that's a fourth basic need, because I know people who will forego food to pay for the data. That's how the world has reached. But then at the same time, your parents might be supporting their parents with a little stipend with your grandparents. Obviously, you cannot leave the older heads to whittle away by the wayside. So you have to see that as a strategic expense too. Just in the same way the government has to deal with old age pension as a strategic commitment. That's why it has to continue to invest in education, granted on a reduced scale. And I'll talk about GATE later. So I just wanted in a simple way to show you how we have to run a country through the cabinet. The Ministry of Energy is the major resource owner, the major revenue owner. So what I do and what the Ministry of Energy does has far-reaching impact. Every month I present a report to the cabinet on the levels of oil, gas, and petrochemical production, which is fundamental to the revenue stream. So all in all, it's a very exciting job. You have to love what you do and do what you love. I think I have found that, probably a little too late in life, but it is very enjoyable, challenging, and I have a good staff under PS Bradshaw-Niles. And more importantly, we have a team of young professionals that are extremely brilliant, they are extremely productive, and I tell them all the time that your learning curve is much steeper than mine. Because what you know at your age, I didn't. Okay, so I have confidence in the youths, and I will pause here for a while and hand back over to you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mr. Minister. Madam PS, can you please tell everyone who's watching, what do you do and why it's important in Trinidad and Tobago?
Okay, thank you very much. Again, thank you for inviting me. Well, I am the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Energy, and the Minister and I work very closely together to ensure that energy and mineral policies are implemented within Trinidad and Tobago and that the industry is sustained. So I am the administrative head and the minister, so I report to the Minister of Energy, and I have a staff of approximately 350 persons who report to me. And so the Ministry of Energy as a whole will be responsible not only for oil and gas, but also for the mineral or the quarrying sector, and also for renewable energy, right? And also health and safety and the environment and all of the issues associated with that within the industry. So on a day-to-day basis, I go from 1 hour, I would be looking at a investment decision that is worth $1 billion TT dollars. And then within the next hour, I will be meeting with staff and I will be discussing our COVID response within the Ministry of Energy and what's happening in the building and how do we socially distance and all of that. So during the course of my day, I'm responsible for the regulation and approving a lot of the paperwork. And also as permanent secretary, I have an extremely important role, which is called being accounting officer and receiver of revenue, right? And that's a public service role. So I am given the authority by the Minister of Finance to disburse all of the funds that go through the Ministry of Energy and also to receive all of the income that comes through the Ministry of Energy to go into the Treasury, as Minister Khan mentioned. So it's a very exciting and challenging job. I really enjoy it because of my long history within the ministry and because of the passion that I have to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago benefits to the fullest from the resources that we have, and so that the population will be able to benefit from it and we will also be sustainable. That is, that looking forward into the future, that we'll be able to map out what's happening in terms of the energy and how we use it and how we best account for it, right, at the Ministry of Energy. So that's what I do.
That is very exciting, very interesting. Thank you for sharing with us. Mr. Monty, can you please tell us what do you do and how is it important to Trinidad and Tobago?
Okay. Up until a month ago, I was the CEO of the Novo. So I'll share with you what I did over the last 10 months and some insight on what I'd like to do going forward. As CEO and founder of the Novo and then Trinity, I was able to raise over 400 million US in funding to invest in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm really passionate about increasing local ownership in the energy sector. And what I mean by that is, historically, we've been producing oil and gas for over 100 years. But I've felt that, there's a lack of local ownership in it. And I wanted to see an increase in that, increasing local content so that essentially the wealth, a lot more of the wealth stays in country and can be distributed in country. So that's my passion. But that's one of the reasons why, we listed Trinity on the London Stock Exchange, which is quite exciting. It's the first time that was ever done by a Trinbagonian company. The stock symbol is Trin for Trinity. The colors are red, white, and black. So it's ready to tell the world that we have the capability to do it as well as a country and as the people. Similarly with the Novo, when we started off from scratch, and Trinidadians built the company literally from scratch to delivering gas in less than 3 months. And what that did is we spent close to 300 million US invested in Trinidad and Tobago. Majority of that was what we call local content, over 75%. And we contribute, about $1 million US in taxes every month to the country. So we had an idle field that was undeveloped that we were able to actually create value from for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, for which the minister and the PS then account for, essentially. And that's something I'd like to continue because I see the value of our people, the skill sets that we have, and we could accomplish so much more by doing more of this. So that's essentially how I see my role as within Trinidad and Tobago. And the other hat I wear as chairman of Heroes is I'm equally passionate about mentorship and mentoring the youth, because that's what helped guide me throughout my career or navigate me through the good, the bad, the ugly, and lots more. So, when we pioneered what we call the workplace model in 2013 was to get corporate Trinidad to mentor youths, understand business, and so on. So I'm really heavily involved in that and helping Lawrence or supporting Lawrence to have digitized Heroes, which is now digitized fully, and to create the right platform, bringing energy sector experience to deliver that to the Heroes and to every youth or every young person that Heroes impacts or interacts with. because like the minister, the future is in the hands of our next generation. I have 2 young kids, and I need to leave when I do leave this earth, leave it in a better place than I came. And that's something that's very important to me. Otherwise I think we would have failed as a generation. So high level view, that's what I do. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of Heroes, and thank you for sharing with us. I would also like to know, Mr. Minister, when you were a child, how did you see yourself and how did you get here? Can you explain that to us?
Well, without disclosing my age, that's a sure long and winding road. But let me quickly capsule my life. I am from Mayaro, okay? From humble parents. When I was attending Mayaro government school, I can recall one day we went on a hike to Point Galiota. That would have been 67, around there, 68. And we walked along the beach and we reached Point Galiota. And all Point Galiota had was a lighthouse. Today, over the last several decades, Point Galiota has been the breadwinner for Trinidad and Tobago through its production from Amoco, now BP, plus all the East Coast production. So in a very real sense, I grew up viewing the energy sector. And when we reached the 70s, you all may not be aware of some of these things. We were a very major oil producer, producing over 250,000 barrels of oil per day off the East Coast. There was no value with gas, but oil comes associated with gas, and there's something called a separator on the platform that separates the gas from the oil. The oil was piped to a tank farm in Galiota. But since at that point in time in the 70s, there was no use for the gas, the gas was flared. And you would come to Mayaro at night and see these huge flares burning offshore, almost like daylight. And that was wasted energy. And then Trinidad transformed itself into a gas-based economy, and that's a different story. But I grew up in that atmosphere. So it, like everything else, we aspire to be some player in the energy sector. And that's possibly my first calling for geology or petroleum engineering, something along those lines. But I want to make another point, because of all your panelists, I am the only politician. So fortunately, being Minister of Energy, I am also an energy technocrat in my own right, plus a politician. So how do you become the Minister of Energy? But before I go there, just one further part of growing up. You see, there's something called public policy. Okay? Public policy is what the government does on behalf of the people. The implementation of GATE under Prime Minister Manning, I was part of that government, was a public policy decision. Where, because the country had money at the time, we felt it was important to pay and to support tertiary level education. We spent $6 to $8 billion over the last decade or so in GATE funding. Now that money has shrunk, so we have adjusted. But in our time, or in my time as a primary school student, you couldn't even think about university, You were just happy to get a secondary education, to get 5 subjects and get a job. In those days, GCEs we got. But to go to a secondary school, when I would common entrance, at that point in 1969, 6,000 students used to pass common entrance. 6,000. And I in Mayaro, from humble parents, I can't go to school San Fernando. Luckily, at that point in time, Dr. Williams' government built a school called Northeastern College in Sandy Grande, which was the closest town to my house. And having passed for Northeastern College, my whole secondary career, O-levels, A-levels, university, kicked off. But I like to tell the story because if a public policy decision wasn't taken to increase the quantum of secondary places available, I would have been left by the wayside. Dr. Rowley tells the same story. He said he was the first of his family to go to secondary school. He had 7 siblings elder than him, but the door wasn't open when they were ready. Luckily, he as the youngest. At that point in time, he could have gotten to go to Bishops in Tobago. So what your generation takes for granted, it didn't come easy. Okay? So it is an important story you need to understand. And it's not that you're going back and burying your head in the past, but you have to see how this country evolved and how the opportunities that you now enjoy had an evolutionary process based on public policy. I went ahead, went to university, did well, came back, built a career in the energy sector, and then transformed into a politician to become the Minister of Energy. But let me just say something about politics now, very briefly. People like to bad talk politicians. And there's some justification in that, don't get me wrong. But you cannot be a minister in this country unless you are a politician. With all the old talk, we do not have a system of government like the United States, where you have what you call an executive cabinet. So the president in America, I don't know how much you know of American politics. The presidential election was just completed there with Biden and Trump. Biden will now choose his cabinet. And he can choose anybody in America he wants to be the Secretary for Energy, or what is there in their terms, the Minister of Energy. In Trinidad and Tobago, you do not have that option. Your minister must come from the parliament. And the parliament includes 2 houses, the House of Representatives with the elected MPs and the Senate, which are appointed people. I served as Minister of Works when I was the elected MP for Mayaro. And now I am a senator and I serve as Minister of Energy. So with all the old talk you're hearing there about politician this, politician that, if you want to be a member of the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, it doesn't matter which party. This is not party politics. This is the political structure of the governance of Trinidad and Tobago. You have to go into the political arena. The government of Trinidad and Tobago is divided into 3 arms. The executive, which is the cabinet, who runs the country. The legislature, which is the parliament, which make laws. And the 3rd arm of government is the judiciary, which is independent of both parties. So, to be a cabinet minister, you must come through politics. And in Trinidad and Tobago, to come through the political road, you have to come through a political party. Okay, so if some people in the country are PNM, some are UNC, some are COP, some are NJAC, some are MSG, that is your right. Nobody can take that away from you. Our duty, if I support party A, is to convince you that what we do is in the best interest of the country. And the other party B, that is their job too. So it's par for the course. It's who brings the most convincing argument. Unfortunately, it turns out to be who has the best music during the election and who put the most jerseys to give away and who make the best speeches on the platform. But at the end of the day, that is what it's all about, and at its most fundamental level. That's how the culture of Trinidad is. That is how the governance structure of the country operates. So I had reached a stage in my professional career that I felt I had maxed out the potential to move further. I never liked working with the big multinationals. I spent a significant part of my career with Petrotrin, which was the state energy company. And then I decided to get into representative politics. Again, because of my hour of bringing you to represent the people, you see all my classmates that I went to primary school with pulling seine and becoming fishermen. And I know they were bright young men and girls. Good. When I go back and I see this one, and she comes second in Tessa, I used to come fourth. She has 6 children and she's struggling. You understand? And then what I said is that there wasn't enough opportunities for everybody. And if the door closed on you and your number is 6 and there's only 5 they wanted, it's unfair. Okay, so the policy now is not to make the number 5, it's to make the number 100. So that everybody will have an equal chance to attain what their life goals are. So I entered politics. I won the election. I became a minister under the Manning administration, Minister of Works and Transport. Under Dr. Rowley, I was a senator. I became Minister of Rural Development. And I was put in rural development. You know why? Because I love rural areas. And he said, Frankie calls me, say, Frankie, take this new ministry now, build it for us. Bring rural peoples on the map. And then you could go back into your core profession. And so said, so done. I spent about 14 or 15 months putting the Ministry of Rural Development on his feet. And here am I for the last 4 years and now going on the 5th year as Minister of Energy. So that's my story.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. Paige, have any questions or asks?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Minister, also for that enlightening story. That was really great history that I never knew about. Madam PS, can you please tell me how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. Well, I was born and grew up in Point Fortin, and from a very young child, growing up in Point Fortin, I was a part of, and most of the persons that I know was a part of the oil industry. So at that time, there was a refinery in Point Fortin, and most of the persons I knew worked in the refinery. We had water. The water that we got was from the oil companies, gas, some places electricity. There was a whistle in the refinery, which would tell you when it was 7 in the morning. I think it used to blow at 11:30, which would tell you when it was lunchtime, and so on, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So a lot of the life that I knew revolved around the oil industry, right? As a matter of fact, the home where I lived, we had very oily deposits that we used to play in. So on a very hot day, you could actually see like oil seeps and so on, right? So I grew up walking on pipelines to get down to the Clifton Hill Beach, and there were wells all around. So, I grew up knowing what about the energy sector. So I went to Point Fortin Anglican School, which my mom went to and my grandmother went to as well. And from there, I passed common entrance and I went to Naparima Girls High School, which was in San Fernando. While at school, I'm a person, I always love to read and to learn. And I like sciences, right? So I did sciences for Form 4 and Form 5. And then I did maths, physics, and chem for A-levels at the time, which we now call CAPE. And I did that because at that point in time, I wanted to go into petroleum engineering. But UWI had stopped the program in petroleum engineering right before I made my choices for school. So I said, well, okay, then I will do chemical engineering. And to get into chemical engineering, I needed maths, phys, and chem. So I did maths, phys, and chem. And so from there, I went into UE. I did chemical engineering. And in my second year, I got an internship with Amoco. So it was Amoco at the time, it's now BP. And so they came on campus and they interviewed us, and I was selected for a summer internship with Amoco. And I got the opportunity while I was there to go offshore and be on a rig and so on. And so that just sealed it for me. I was like, this is really exciting. So at that point in time, for that summer, I actually had to live in Guayari and I would come back to Point on weekends while I was on campus. And so I was able to, besides what I knew from Point 14, I was able to see the other aspects of the energy sector there. And I always had I was very fortunate. I had a very strong family support. My mom didn't work in the oil industry, but she was a seasoned public servant her entire career. She was in the public service. And for the mantra that she had is that all of her children had to give back to the country, right? And all of us ended up serving in government one way or the other, right, as part of the public service. So that was her thing. So I guess it worked out well in that I ended up fulfilling both roles. I started off at the Ministry of Energy as a petroleum engineer. And so I ended up being a public servant, but working in the energy sector. So I kind of blended the two, right? And so because of that, I have always known firsthand what the impact of the sector is on the people who live there, right? Because I live among them. I knew when things were good, when it was bad. The energy sector has a cycle that we will go through, right? Which we call boom and bust. So you will have high prices and everything is good and everybody will be working. And then there would be the low prices and then the companies will let everybody go and then things will get hard, right? So I was there when we transitioned from Shell to when it went to Trintok, and then when it became Petrotrin, right? So I saw the transition as well. So coming into the Ministry of Energy as a young petroleum engineer, I had all of that background and experience. So for me, I have always understood how important my job is in terms of what we do for the government, and also in terms of how important the sector is to the country. And so because of that, I've always had a very broad view in terms of not just like looking at wells and drilling and so on, but also in terms of seeing how best we can have the right policies and the right approach so that we will preserve the environment, but we will also care for the persons who work and live in the communities where there is oil and gas, right? Because of my background. So coming through, I was a petroleum engineer. I worked for several years. And what I did at that point in time, we would have engineers assigned to different companies. So I was assigned to Petrotrin. So all of the wells that had to be drilled, the facilities and so on, I would approve those. So it meant going out in the field and so on, and going offshore at some times. And then I also became involved in like strategic management within the ministry. And so I worked on a strategic plan for the Ministry of Energy, and I took a lot of opportunities, like when there were big conferences, I would sign up to rapporteur. Rapporteur means that you're going to take notes. So what that did is that it afforded me the opportunity to get to meetings and so on that I would normally at my level not be privy to. But I was able to sit in and hear and understand and see how very senior persons had dialogue, right, within the industry. And in my career too, we had consultations for energy policy. And there were consultations in Tobago, in Port of Spain, in South, and I signed up and I rapporteured for that. So I was able to go and hear views from people all over. So that helped me to understand a whole lot of the industry beyond the day-to-day job that I had. And so I went on, I became a senior petroleum engineer. I went away, I got a scholarship from the government, an energy scholarship, and I went away and I did an MBA in petroleum management. So half of my courses was in management, half in petroleum engineering. And then I came back to the ministry, and the opportunity came for me to sit an exam to apply to be a deputy permanent secretary. I was successful in that. And after being appointed deputy permanent secretary, I got the opportunity. I was appointed to act as permanent secretary at the Ministry of Energy. So that's my journey over 23 years. It has been very, very rewarding. I think I have achieved and done a lot more than I even imagined I could be. When you talk about when you were a child, I mean, I have really done quite a lot and I've enjoyed it. So that's my story.
Thank you, Madam P.S. for sharing with us. Mr. Monty, how did you get where you are today from where you were a child? Can you explain to us?
I will. Sometimes I wonder how as well. So, at a young age, I was born in Diggle Martin, and I grew up my parents had split when I was a baby. So I grew up actually in a public servant household because my stepfather actually worked in the Ministry of Works for over 50 years, and he was from Point Fortin. And he really told me a lot about what happened in the past and the experiences he went through to get where he did, and instill in us the power of education. So I went to Maria Regina Grade School in Port of Spain, and then I went to St. Mary's College. And then when I was in Form 6, I decided I wanted to do economics. And I told my father, my stepfather, that I want to do economics, and he needs to pay for me to go and do a degree wherever I want to go. And then in lower 6, truth be told, we had a very nice teacher. So I kind of was in awe of this teacher, Miss Gomez, and she was my accounting teacher. So I switched. I said, well, let me switch to accounting. And then I told my dad and my stepdad, I want to do accounting. And both said, well, the best way to do it is actually join a firm after you work. So my dad made a call. He knew the head of EY very well. And a week after 17 years old, starting from the bottom up, literally. And I had to work and study. So literally I'll go to work. After work, you go to classes, come back and work. So I worked and studied for the first 3 years until I became qualified as a chartered accountant. And that's where I got to understand the power of mentoring, because back then we had a lot of good mentors guide you through the whole workflow ethics, all those type of things. Very powerful experiences. And then what really transformed my career is in 1999 when BP took over Amoco. And what happened is, in a nutshell, PwC were the auditors for Amoco, but Ernst & Young were the auditors for BP. And when BP acquired Amoco, Ernst & Young became the auditors. But Ernst & Young did not have any energy experience at that time because they did not audit any oil and gas companies in Trinidad. And Amoco was then pretty much the only game in town back in 1999. So they put me in for 4 other folks on the audit. So we had to learn energy very, very quickly. Cut a long story quickly. Within the first day, I became head of that team. And we then became the top reporting company globally. Then Ernst & Young London in 2001 called me and recruited me to move to London, where I was about 25 or 26 years old then. I then became sort of the global account manager for BP Exploration. So all of the global businesses across the globe were reported to London, and I was responsible for consolidating it and so on, which opened my eyes up to, how best to put this nicely, the wealth created from the energy industry at a consolidated level. And what is being extracted, what the true wealth being created. And it got me to understand the value chain and how it all worked. And because that team was small, I was exposed to meetings with the then CEO of BP Exploration, Lord Brown, and so on, sitting in the meetings and learning from them. And that was quite powerful. Then I realized my dad called me once and I said, listen, I'm confused as to what to do in life, because I'm here. I was doing very well, but I didn't have any, how best to put it, I had no meaning. I felt I was in London and, the lifestyle was very good. The money was good, but I didn't have any meaning. And then my dad and my stepdad said, it's time you return home and bring the learnings from abroad and bring it back home. And that was really transformative for me. So I came back home with Winston Young, and I guess the rest is history. From there, I then joined a small independent oil and gas company, moved to South to understand the intricacies of the oil and gas industry, became the CEO of that company, Trinity, in 2008. And then we listed it on the London Stock Exchange in 2013, a whole host of other experiences. Then in 2015, I got a very interesting lesson, good lesson, in financial management when the oil price dropped by 50, 100%. And then I decided to found or create a new company. I don't know where the thought came from because it was the worst possible time to do that. But I wanted to sort of create something new with greater local content and really be locally managed and headquartered in Trinidad. And that was the vision of De Novo. And we did that and successfully delivered on that. Where I am now, I had to leave De Novo for other reasons. And going forward, I want to do something again transformative, where we could utilize the local skills, keep more of the wealth in country, those type of things. So my career path has taken some major steps in various directions, but I've seen it from all different sides and learned a hell of a lot to get to where I was. But that's clear. That was the path I took. And the major lesson learned is not to be afraid to take a leap, right? So even though when you took the leap, I was scared as what's appropriate use, very scared because it was major leaps. But afterwards you realize, okay, take a deep breath and like, oh, all right, cool. But don't be afraid to take a leap. So
such interesting stories. Well, before we started, Faith and I were talking, and I would like to know, when people of such power, what was one of the biggest challenges along the way, and how did you overcome it? Mr. Minister, can you please tell us? Mr. Minister.
Okay, yeah, I'm hearing you. Yeah. Well, there are so many, so I was looking which one to choose. Biggest challenge along the way, and biggest challenges, as I know the way has been so long. But let me deal with the present. The present, let me telegraph the COVID world and the post-COVID world and the world of zero carbon and renewable energy. It is very clear that that is the trajectory or the direction in which everybody on Earth wants the world to go. There's something called global warming. There's something called climate change. There's something called sea level rise. These are three features that are man-made. And for those of you who get into zoology, which I did at A-levels, you will know something about evolution. And the human species, in terms of the fossil record, is only here for a minute time. But it's the only species that has developed on this planet that had the ability to change its own environment. The environment is who creates species through Darwin's theory of adaptation. However, we are the only species, for better or for worse, has been able to change our environment. In a lot of cases, we have done it for the better. But in these three instances, we have done it for the worse. However, as a resilient species, if you keep calling a species for this discussion, we can readjust. And what the world is saying now is that we have to rethink how we use energy and how we create energy and how we do it in a way that starts to talk about an ecosystem. Now, the word ecosystem is now almost ubiquitous in the world, and everything has an ecosystem now. Energy has an ecosystem, biology has an ecosystem, zoology has an ecosystem, economics have an ecosystem, because everything is interrelated. Okay, and when you interfere with one, there's a reaction that you have to study. So, what the world is saying is that we want to move away from fossil fuel. Fossil fuel is oil and gas. Okay? And for those of you who do chemistry, let me give you a little chemistry lesson now. Fossil fuel is largely hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons mean what? Chemicals that are constituted from hydrogen and carbon. Okay? So, natural gas is CH3, which is methane, and oil, liquid oil, or black oil as you call it, are very complex hydrocarbon chains and rings. Energy is produced by hydrogen. But unfortunately, with hydrocarbon, the byproduct is carbon, and the byproduct is emitted as carbon dioxide. So every time you burn a fossil fuel to create energy, whether it is oil, whether it is gas, the byproduct of that is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the single most important contributor to global warming. So it is not that the world is against hydrocarbon, the world is against carbon. The world wants hydrogen. So the whole thinking now is to move to renewable energy or to get hydrogen from some other source. Now, we are a hydrocarbon producing country. So what do we do in an environment like that? What we are seeing now in this country, and that is the challenge we face, is that our lifeblood is being taken away from us. For those of you who study history again, history is an important subject. You could be a scientist. I am a scientist, but you have to study history. Trinidad and Tobago, there was a time here in the 1920s and the 1930s when cocoa was king. When cocoa prices were skyrocketing, every cocoa planter was a wealthy millionaire in those days. And then sugar became king. And then we had to shut down the sugar industry because it went bankrupt. And then oil and gas has reigned for over 70 years. Are we coming to the end of that life cycle? And are we going to take into a new life cycle now? And that will depend on the career path you guys take, because that is where the world is going. So that is the basic challenge, not only Trinidad face, that the whole hydrocarbon energy sector in the world faces. And how we transition from that, I don't have the answers yet. We be now starting that strategic thinking at the level of the government and at the level of the private sector. Because at the end of the day, you have to survive. And this country survived and has survived for decades because we sell commodities that the world wants to buy. The revenue we earn in this country, most of it comes from the sale of oil, gas, ammonia, methanol, urea, iron and steel, okay, plus other manufactured products. And we're now selling a lot of services, like Monty has been involved in services. They sell services, You can't put service in a box and tie it like in Amazon, But you can sell it. That is what's called intangibles. Okay, you can sell software. Microsoft for years has been the richest company in the world. Bill Gates has been the richest man. Bill Gates doesn't own anything except something called an operating system, called Windows. Okay? That is not a physical asset, So there's all these transitions that are taking place that your generation will have to capitalize on. And all we have to do is build a template and a roadmap for going forward on that. So that is what I see as the biggest challenge facing the country now. But as the Minister of Energy, I have to protect the energy sector for as long as I could in its current form too, Because if we cut that umbilical cord, Kapos won't be pipe, For want of a better phrase, okay? Because that is what is sustaining our livelihood. So we cannot survive much longer on low oil prices and low gas prices, In 2008, this country earned the most revenue it has ever earned in its history, largely from the sale of liquefied natural gas. Liquefied natural gas was being sold in the Asian market in those days at $10 to $12 US per MMBTU. That's the unit in which it is sold. You know what's the price of that now? $2.80. From $12 to $2.80. So these are some of the challenges that we face. But there are always solutions. We have to work together to craft the solutions. There are other issues that probably this session is not the right forum to discuss some of the technical aspects of it. But all I want to tell you all as young people is that the major challenge that is facing the industry, which is the energy sector as we know it, is the whole, what they call the zero carbon world. Okay? It's not a threat, it is a new reality. Okay? And we have to get on board with that and see how best we can capitalize on that. So I hope I didn't confuse you too much, but by and large, that is the story that we have to start to preach to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. There will be electric cars. There will be something that instead of having to go to a gas station to fill up gasoline, you plug it in. Okay, because electric cars has no emission. You'll be surviving on wind energy, not power plants generating all the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Okay, solar energy. Okay, and if you had geothermal, you could have geothermal too. Hydroelectric, all these are clean energy sources. So while we see the future as that, you have to take that and juxtapose it or put it side by side with our current reality. And when you enter a system, you cannot pull out of it instantaneously because the whole thing will disrupt. You have to transition out of it. It is my view that the transition will take some time. The longer it takes, it will be better for us. But if that speed is accelerated, this country has to be prepared for it. Okay, so I just want to articulate that as the challenge, because that challenge will impact directly on you young people, and that challenge will impact on what you study in a future world. Okay? Because if you study petroleum engineering, and in 2035, the world doesn't want any petroleum engineers again, what do? So that is the paradox we face right now. And that is the challenge. I don't want to scare you too much because there's still a lot of bright future out there for everything. You just have to continue to monitor the market. And just finally, before I close, we have to have a whole new perspective now in this country. And I'm glad Monty is your mentor on career guidance and what is the type of areas that young people need to go into. Because we have an influx of everything. We've got the traditional skill sets and are now being exhausted. There was a time in my time in university, the prized profession was medicine. Look where doctors have reached today. None of them graduating could get a job. We used to virtually envy them, Good. I was at Mona in those days. We didn't have no medical school in St. Augustine. Mona campus had two specialties, geology and medicine. And when you were a doctor, you strutted around the campus. They had these white gongs and it was with the stethoscope on the air, and it's a strut. Not walking, this is strut, chest up. Okay? Today, all of them, you virtually walk into a job. No, there are no vacancies in the Ministry of Health. Good. With 5G and artificial intelligence, just now you could take an operation here, and the people in Mumbai in India doing it,
Mm-hmm.
So get real, Get real is a changing world. But there's some new legal software coming onto the market now. And it will virtually make most lawyers redundant. Okay, you can just log on an app and you will get all your documents and stuff without paying a small fee. Okay, and just get somebody to sign it for you. So all your traditional professions, okay, it is coming in under serious threat. So I don't know what the future would be like, and I wouldn't dare think I would know. But what I'm saying is that and Monty could bear me out on this in particular because he is the mentor of this group. You have to reassess your focus on career guidance and what is the careers of the future. So I'm speaking too long, so I will shut my mouth now.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. That was really interesting and great to hear.
It was.
Mr. Monty, would you like to tell me what was one of your biggest challenges and how did you overcome it?
Actually, yes, I'm happy to. It's linked somewhat to what the minister said. So when we started De Novo, one of the key things I wanted to be is to use technology. Because in 2016, something was bugging me about the traditional models. But the team members were focused on doing what they did in the past and replicating it. And I had to convince them to sort of unlearn what they learned, to relearn for the future and embrace technology. Lawrence was working with us, and believe you me, every day was a fight. Every single day was a fight to get folks to use technology, stop using paper, stop using etc. And it took us about 3 years, right, for everybody to change their mindset, to understand that, are we an upstream company or are we a technology company that produces gas? That change was a huge challenge that we had to go through, that, that our country needs to go through and everyone needs to go through, because where the world is going, you have a Airbnb, it's a hotel company without any hotels. You have a taxi company, Uber, without any taxis. So it's really, we're technology companies that deliver services. And with that, the skill sets required are very different. You need to really embrace technology, sit for the future. You can't just be, for example, a doctor, not embrace technology or etc. It's all in one. And that was one of the biggest challenges we had. Because we were really forthright that this is where we wanted to go. Some people had to leave, some people didn't embrace it, etc. But we had to fight to push that, I guess, ethos through. The end result was actually very, very heartwarming afterwards. At this time, the offshore platform is the only truly unmanned platform with no helipad, no boats, no people on board. So put that in perspective, we have De Novo was a platform in the Gulf of Paria where no one goes. They visit it once every 2 weeks. It's operated onshore, and we probably not even touching the extent of what technology can do. But that's where it's evolving towards, right? But there's a huge challenge to get the team to get to that place. And my fear is that and it's actually a benefit to the younger folks, quite frankly, because I think younger folks quicker embrace technology than the older folks like us. Because how do we unlearn that? But you all are quicker. My 2 sons are on the iPad playing games and doing things that, I still have to learn. So you all have a real advantage with that. And that's something that, needs to be leveraged on going forward. So, that puts it in perspective, that was one of my biggest challenges. And I see it also for the country. And the question is, how do we help Trinidad and Tobago overcome that challenge as a country to move and change that mindset? And embrace technology across the board and not be fearful of it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Madam PS, can you please tell us what was one of your biggest challenges in your line of work up to this point?
Yeah, sure. Well, seeing that being interviewed by two beautiful young ladies, I will take it more to a personal level. I think both our minister and Monty sort of explain work challenges and industry challenges, which I have faced, but I want to give a different perspective in terms of the challenges that I have faced. So one of the things within the industry between the time that I joined and now is the fact that when I first started, there weren't a lot of women in the industry. So it was very common at that time for me to be the only female in the room, the only female as part of the crew out of the field, the only female on a rig at that point in time, right? So those were pretty normal at that point. Things have changed tremendously. However, while being a petroleum engineer, I got married and I have 3 children now who are ages 12 to 11, to 18. So, but all of my children I had while I was a petroleum engineer and a senior petroleum engineer, which involved, based on the job that I had at the time, traveling quite a lot, right? It involved being overseas, going abroad for meetings, conferences, and for other projects that, I might have been on. And so one of the challenges I had to deal with personally was managing and balancing my career with that of being a wife first and then a wife and a mom, right? And a mother. And trying to find that balance. How do I satisfy all of the demands, which required sometimes being away for long hours or for days or sometimes even a couple of weeks, right? And having to do that. And so that was something that I had to work through. And even today, BNPS, that challenge hasn't gotten any easier because, of course, now I have more responsibility. And, the demands of the job comes at all hours and at every day of the week, right? And being a parent, you're a parent 24/7. So what helped me a lot is that I enjoyed all of the roles that I have. So I'm not saying that there weren't difficult moments, but I really, I was happy to have my family, to have my children, and, to be involved in their development. And so what it required for me is at times reaching out to get advice from other women who would have gone through the same thing. And so even though you have mentoring now, I'm telling you that as you move through life, there are specific persons or mentors that you would need to pull on for different things, right? So for me, I had to get a couple of women who would understand. And the thing about it, once you get into with a group and talk some of the things you think that you alone are experiencing, you will realize that it is a normal thing or somebody would have gone through it before and they would be able to give you advice as to how to handle it, how to manage so that you will be able to cope at the time or to come up with solutions. And so one of the lessons I learned from that is that I had to be satisfied with not being able to be present for every single event that my children have, or not being able to meet all of the demands at the same time, because sometimes there are conflicts. So with 3 children, what would happen is like the first 2 weeks of the term, I would have a different parent meeting with a different class, maybe at 2 or 3:30, about 3 days for the week, right? And I might have a very important meeting with Monty about a field development that he wants me there for, right? So I have, so I'm just giving an example, right? So that you have to balance all of that to see So sometimes I'm there physically at the meeting. Other times I would liaise with a parent and the WhatsApp chat or with the teacher and say, look, I really cannot make it today, but can I have the notes or can I arrange a separate meeting with you? Right? So that I don't miss out on what's happening, but I'm also able to satisfy the requirements of the job. Right? And during this pandemic, it's been a lot more challenging because you don't have homework center. So for example, my youngest daughter, there was a homework center that she would be in from after school until I'm able to come from work, and that homework center could not function. As a matter of fact, that person had to close their business, right? So because of the pandemic, right? So it's not, that's outside of all of our control. So I'm just saying, for me, that's one of the challenges that I had to overcome. But I want you to know, especially as young women and for those listening out there, that it is something that you can do. And my mom did it, and I'm doing it, and a lot of other women do it. So don't think that because you're in a career that you can't have the benefit of a family too. And there's a lot of good support around, and you are able to manage, and everything will be fine.
Thank you for sharing with us. But although it is very flattering, I think I'm a lady, I'm a boy, so I understand what you're trying to say. No, it's no problem.
Sorry, my camera. I do apologize.
No problem. But moving on, I would like to stay with you, Madam PS, and ask what was one of your best experiences in your line of work?
So, yeah, on the flip side, the best experiences, and I will bring a general. I can't say that I have one, I have many, but I think some of what brings me satisfaction, deep, feeling of accomplishment is really on two areas. One is on the people side. I have within the ministry, we have a team of persons, and coming through the industry, the petroleum industry as a whole is it's a sort of close, it's a very small group, more or less. So you will travel and you will meet the same persons over and over. So one of the things that I've felt a lot of accomplishment with is within the ministry itself, in terms of the team that I have. A minister spoke about the young persons that we have. So having come up as through my entire career and having benefited from a lot of persons who have spent way more time than me, double my career within the industry, and was able to mentor me and help me, that I am now able to do the same for those who are young within the ministry, and they are now forming their own opinions, their approach to work, and so on. So this year in particular, when we went into the work from home, I was able to launch, together with a group of other persons within the ministry, something we call the quarantine series, the quarantine mentorship series, where from April until September, we had every Friday morning 2 or 3 hour session. One aspect of it was dealing, we had people coming in to share their experiences. So Minister can actually start it off, and we were able to bring in a lot of persons. Then we shared about the industry and persons, their life experiences, and all the different aspects of the industry. So that was extremely helpful. It helped us to focus and also to remain in contact with each other during that 6-month period. So for me, that was one of the big achievements that I've had.
Thank you so much. That was really good hearing. So, Honourable Minister, I would like to know
Faith, Erica.
Oh, sorry. Something going on.
We're hearing you. We're hearing you.
So while Faith is trying to fix the audio, I think I should ask Mr. Minister, what was one of your best experiences in your line of work?
Well, okay, I'll give you two best experiences. One is very short. It's personal to me in terms of my own career. And I just want to build further on the PS's point of our renewed trust and engagement with the young professionals in particular, but young people in general in the ministry. We have a program called the mentorship program in the ministry. We have taken, we don't want to sound elitist in this regard, but we had to find a criteria because what makes the energy sector unique is the talent pool we have to clash against, so to speak, when we deal with major energy companies. They are well resourced, they are well researched, and they are well funded. So it is like a weak Trinidad football team going to play Brazil, to play France, or to play Germany. And for years, we have had that handicap. We have taken the decision that we need to build a new cadre of professionals that could match these companies, to use a local parlance, manus manus, okay? One for one, punch for punch. Because today the technology is now ubiquitous, everybody has it. So the same software, the same financial modeling they could run, we have access to it too. The same data analytics they have. We have it probably at a lower scale, but we have it. Then we can take consultant. So for the first time in the history of this industry, over the last 5 years or so, we have been meeting these energy companies virtually on a level playing field. And that largely has to do with the quality of young staff that we have. I mean, I am so impressed. When I give the PS and say I want this done, and when I see the report and I say, hey, this thing good, and I say, no, you didn't do it, you know. You are the PS. I want to see who actually did it. And invariably, it is one of those young professionals in the ministry that has done all the research. And the ability to write reports, the ability to analyze, the ability to do scenario planning, and all that sort of thing is what fills me with whatever joy I could extract on a day-to-day basis in the ministry. I have not met a single young professional that has disappointed me. I mean, one day I will be disappointed, I know that. But for the time being, and let me just take this gender thing a little step further. The tables have now turned, you know. Most of the young professionals we have, most of them who are shining, so to speak, now in the ministry, are young women and girls. I say that without fear of contradiction. Okay? We have a mentorship program, all of which you have to get into it. You must be a first-class honors student to distinction in your master's, or an island scholar with a first-class honors. So academically, you're well prepared. Okay? And I'm almost sometimes embarrassed to give you the ratio of female to male. The PS was right. When I joined the energy sector, women couldn't go on a rig, you know. That was in the early 80s, you know. And these old jewelers, they say, all I want to blight my wig out. Just by, no, that, and they were serious, you know. They were old jewelers that will tell you, I don't want a woman on my wig. He didn't say the wig, you know. He said my wig. And that was the culture of the time. So, the future is in good hands. We have to continue to mentor and develop these young people. We have to give them the tools to work. Okay? You cannot be afraid of working at home when you're in a digital world. I know we still have this lingering thing that you're going to be skylarking. So if you have a little baby, okay, just take off your video for a while and feed your baby and continue to talk. So what is so wrong with that? Okay? And the men have to feed the babies too now. Okay? And this idea of women have to take more responsibility. I mean, that is also something of the past. We have to have shared parenting now. Okay, and we all face it, not only females. I remember, I'll give you one further experience. My daughter was graduating as a lawyer in the UK. I was in the Manning cabinet. She went to the University of Nottingham, then into Inns of Court. And that day I was supposed to leave to go to attend a graduation. It was an important bill, it was a police bill. That we needed a special majority to vote on. Mr. Manning said, you cannot leave. Okay? And somewhere down in my heart, I said, first time I stood up, I said, Chief, I said, that is not negotiable. I said, that is not negotiable. I said, you could take a job and shove it. Okay? But I am not going to miss my daughter's graduation because she will remember that for the rest of her life. Okay? And there will be a day when I will leave this political world, but I will always have a daughter. Okay? So that's the story. And the only other story I want to tell you about good experiences, and there are certain simple things that happen in life that motivate you. Before Petrotrin, there's a company called Trinidad Tesoro. It's one of the precursor companies. Trinidad Tesoro was 51% Tesoro Corporation, I think 49% government. I worked at Tesoro as a trainee geologist, trainee. And there was one expatriate in the company. And his name, I'll give you his name, he's probably died by now. His name was Ken Durham. He was the exploration manager. And I remember going to my first AAPG conference in Atlanta, Georgia. AAPG, American Association of Petroleum Geologists. And he went, I went. And obviously, he's the boss. And when we went into the conference, and he looked at me, and he said, Frankie, see those white boys you see there? All of them with a jacket and tie? Sorry for the language. He said, don't be intimidated by them. Say you all are just as good or even better than them. That was in the early 80s. And we didn't even have a global perspective then. And that has stayed in me throughout my career. You do not go out there and feel intimidated. It could be an executive, it could be any race, any ethnicity. You go there on equal footing, on a level playing field. And it's time, Trinidad, the third world, black people, sorry for the language, stand up and say, I can meet you one-on-one. We have to start to build the confidence in ourselves and our future as a country. Okay? That's my experience.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. That was really fascinating to hear. Mr. Monty, can you please tell me what is one of your best experiences?
Yeah, I'll draw on two. But I want to touch on what the minister said because that's very I went through similar experiences when I went to London. I remember one of my first meetings, I was the only Black Caribbean in the boardroom. And it was extraordinarily intimidating at age 24. When you start to speak, you could hear your voice shivering. You're 25-year-old and you're just facing this, and it took a lot to overcome that fear. And the person leading the meeting was actually the deputy chairman of EY. And one of the experience, he came up to me and he just said in my ears, "Don't worry, you can do it." And I was able to speak, but it takes a lot out of you, because you feel intimidated. Sometimes you feel I won't say like a second-class person, but what do you call it? Yeah, but you feel that you're not good enough. And it took a lot to overcome that. That self-confidence is very important. That we are and have the ability to stand up to anyone. And I fully endorse that. And having been through it, you will go through it. It's a challenge. Two of my best experiences I'll just share was one is it was back in 2001, just before I went to move to London. The team that I led to audit BP Trinidad at that point in time, funny enough, was an all-female team. So I had 4 girls who were working for me at that point in time. And when I left, they then went on to do extraordinary things. Their careers have taken off. One is actually, I think, the Minister Penelope, Janet Joseph at Shell. She is at age, she's one of the youngest commercial persons, and I think she's in charge of the Atlantic Energy contract for Shell at age 38. So seeing and being part of helping other person careers and seeing their passion take off was one of my best experiences, and similar throughout my career, where you're part of allowing younger folks and different folks to achieve their passion. And that's something that's very important to me. That's what drives me, just seeing people that actually do what they're meant to be. And the second one is actually a very short one, was when we opened up the gas wells on the Novo on November the 18th, 2018. I said, praise the Lord, it's done. And it works. So that was that night was, a sleepless night. But when, and when you're listening on the phone and you hear the gas wells start to roar, that was a hell of an experience to see, okay. So that certainly was a very one-hit wonder in terms of it was done. So those two simple experiences.
Thank you so much, Mr. Monty. That was really great hearing from you. So I would like to ask you all this question. I know you have had a lot of challenges in life, and I personally would like to know, Mr. Minister, what do you see as one of your biggest upcoming energy challenges, and how do you think we all can overcome them together?
Well, I think I answered that question before. The biggest energy challenge is this transition to a zero carbon future. And I spent quite a lot of time on that, so I don't want to repeat myself. There's one immediate challenge, which is slightly complex for probably this audience, but there's something called the gas value chain. Because in the sale of gas, it comes through a chain, which is upstream, midstream, downstream, and trading. Okay, upstream producers produce the gas, which is BP and Shell. Then midstream is the National Gas Company, which is what is called the aggregator. They buy and sell. The downstream is we make 2 products from gas: LNG, which is liquefied natural gas, which is exported, and petrochemicals, which is basically ammonia and methanol. And then there's also a value beyond that, where we trade in these commodities, okay, on the open market. That whole sequence of events has different values along its route, okay? And the government has to be very careful that one part of the chain do not extract more value than they are due at the expense of somebody else. So in other words, the upstream shouldn't sell gas at too high a price so that the downstream cannot make a profit. Okay? And the downstream also must understand that to get the gas from upstream, they have to invest money. And to invest money, they have to make a return on their money. So they need a fair price. Okay, so that's where the government comes in as a regulator to make sure that that chain remains intact We are not involved in the gas price negotiation itself, because that's a commercial hands-off arrangement between the companies. But to manage that whole process, especially in these times of low prices, for commodities in particular, it's an extreme challenge. And that is basically the greatest challenge that this country faces as we speak. And how we solve that in the coming months will be very, very critical to the future of this country. Can't say no more on that, because a lot of those discussions are quite confidential and at a very high level. But just to let you know that the pricing of gas and the pricing of commodities is very, very critical. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Madam PS, what do you see as one of the biggest upcoming energy challenges, and how do you think we can all overcome it together?
So I just want to concur with what the minister has mentioned, and he spoke quite a bit of it. I will just address it at a different level. So let me just reference, there's a book written and compiled by a lot of different local authors. It's called From Oil to Gas and Beyond, which was edited by the deceased Trevor Booksin, who was a guru in the industry. And in one of the chapters, it says that Trinidad and Tobago has successfully been able to transition at the right time from sugar to oil and then to natural gas, right? Going from petrochemicals into LNG. And as Minister mentioned earlier, right now, where we are in terms of our industry and how we move forward, we are at a pivotal moment again, right? And so, I mean, it's the same challenge that we all face. However, at another level, we mentioned briefly again earlier about new skills and what would be required. And Monty mentioned about technology. And so, you know, we have certain things now where we call machine learning, the Internet of Things, data mining. You have new things, right, in terms of carbon trading. So there are lots of new ways of doing things, new ways of managing the business, and new thinking in terms of how we do that. And so for me, as permanent secretary, one of the challenges that I think as an executive for the sector is how do you prepare the staff and by extension the industry, you know, in terms of moving forward with that. And what pace do you go? Is it slow? Is it fast? You know, how much do you invest in it and when? And so that's some of the key things that that I think, questions that we have to answer. How can we face it together? I think that we are very fortunate within Trinidad and Tobago that we have a long history of, I think, doing some of the right things and being a pioneer in some of the areas. And I think with that, we would be able to capitalize on the strengths that we have and the sort of intellectual prowess that we have as a people to come together. And so what we're doing now is to discuss a lot of that and, you know, see what we can do so that we can move forward in the right way. So I think what we need in terms of overcoming it is really to be able to have open conversations, discuss it, and which is what we are trying to encourage at the Ministry of Energy.
Thank you so much, Madam PS. That was really good hearing. Mr. Monty, what about you? What are your thoughts on one of the biggest upcoming energy challenges, and how can we overcome it together?
I mean, fully endorsed what the minister and PS said. I mean, I was going to say the same thing, so I have to think of something new. But the biggest challenge is how do we, well, the way I see it, one of the challenges, not the biggest necessarily, is attracting capital into the sector. the energy industry requires a lot of capital, which is quite significant. Unfortunately, a lot of the local capital do not invest. And one of the things that for me personally, or I would like to see is greater investment by locals. It's not that they don't necessarily have the cash or they don't have the liquidity, they do. And why do they not invest in it and invest in the transition that's required? So how do we mobilize local capital? And why that's important is whilst they may not be able to fund entire projects, you potentially have the ability to keep greater amount of the wealth in country, local ownership at the top level or greater local ownership, which will bring on local content and those type of things into the national interest. So that's something that I'd like to see, is that's a challenge that we've always faced, the whole conversation around local content. And that's something that we need to pursue, especially as we transition, whether it takes a year, 10 years, 15 years, how do we ensure that through that transition that we also take that into account and mobilize local capital. So that's I'd like to add that to the other two major challenges that we faced as a country. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Monty. I'd like to change the topic a bit. For you, what makes a hero, Madam PS?
So for me, a hero is someone who, while maintaining their integrity, while having values that uphold justice and being fair to mankind, they are able to accomplish what they need to, so that it can better the world for everyone. So, and that does not take having extensive qualifications or being in a high position, but certainly, being able in whatever, within whatever remit you have, within whichever part of society you are, being able to combine those things and to make, this world, really a better place for everyone to live in. I consider that person to be a hero.
Well, Madam Speaker, I would like to know, who is your hero and what do you learn from them?
So for me, my hero, I would say, is my mom. So my mother, she, I think, encapsulates all of those things I just said. And she was able to, focus on better for society. She's always helping someone, building a home, getting food, clothing for persons in the community, helping them to do things to achieve what they need to. And so that's what I grew up with. She had even started, was part of a founding group for NGO called Foster Friends, where they literally took on like persons who were in foster children, who I grew up with as almost as sisters and brothers. And so for me, that I would say she's my hero. In terms of, the values and what I've learned from her.
Thank you so much, Madam PS.
So, Mr. Monty, I would like to know for you, what makes a hero?
A hero is somebody who acts when it's required without fear of the repercussions because they know it's for the greater good. And whether it's seen or unseen, they do it because it's for the greater good. They don't necessarily broadcast it or dictate it. It's not Superman flying through the sky. Everybody knows he's doing something nice. I mean, that's a hero too, don't get me wrong. But for me, it's those quiet, unsung heroes who do it, every day, different things. And they do it for the right reasons. And that's to me what a hero, or what a true hero is. Yeah.
I would also like to know, Mr. Monty, who is your hero and what did you learn from them?
My hero is my stepfather. He took me on when my mother remarried when I was about 2 years old. He was from Point Fortin, a public servant. His name is Anthony Seeley in the Ministry of Works, and he was a director there for, I think, probably 50 years. After he retired, they kept him on for about 20 years till he was about 80 years old. And certainly his integrity, and I guess back then, pre-independence, working in the public service was a huge deal because that was the premier job. He had won a scholarship from Texaco to go to study in England, and as a young black male, he'd always talk about the racism, what happened in England, what he had to go through, travel by boat to London, all those sort of things. And within the ministry, ministry had to turn down bribes, those type of things, so his work ethic, his integrity really stood out, and it was amazing from what he accomplished from Point Fortin, and having to leave Point Fortin, came to Port of Spain to achieve that was phenomenal in that era. So I couldn't have done what he did, let's put it that way. I couldn't imagine doing that there.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you, Mr. Monty. That was really wonderful and inspiring hearing. Honourable Minister, can you please tell me for you what makes a hero?
Well, Monty alluded to it en passant. To be a hero, you have to get a costume and fly through the air like Wonder Woman or Spider-Man. But seriously, if you ask anybody that question, they will answer the same way PS answered it and Monty answered it. And I'm about to answer it in the same vein. So when you take that optic, my hero is my mom, obviously, because she was a single mom and she worked her butt out to send us all to school. And how she did it, God alone knows. She wanted nothing in return except our love. So that's a hero. Under trying circumstance, they did what they had to do. Despite the challenges, without fear of anybody derailing them, because you have your mission and you do it. The problem with that is that society doesn't recognize that. So you speak to everybody at a personal level and they give you the same narrative, they give you the same talk, but nobody recognizes you for being that simple person who stands for principle. Okay? Because the hero is always some person on the papers every day who do something great, whatever great means. Okay, so the concept of a hero is good, but we have to, the heroes that we know are genuine heroes, we must let them know that and let them know that in the right way. And you see, simple community recognition, because the human being likes to be recognized, They really, because when you do well in your exam, if your father just take the report card and he watch it and he give it back to you, you feel hurt. Okay, but he has to say something good because we love to be recognized. Okay, so we must have recognition at all levels. Okay, in the community, you have somebody like PS's mom. She worked in Point. She did something. The Point community or the Point Fortin borough, somebody should come and say, we have 10 people here. Let's give them a little award ceremony every year. It's not that you're doing anything for praise, but you like to be recognized. Because people may tell you, I want a thing, Trust me, they want something. And they may not want money. They may not want a trophy. But they want somebody to stand up and say, you did well. And the person who must do that must be somebody of, I don't want to use the word prominence, but somebody in the society that people look up. Okay, because you want to be recognized by authority. Okay? And you feel better about yourself. So, I mean, we know what the answer is, because Monty told you the same thing, PS told you the same thing, and I am telling you the same thing. My hero is my mom. PS hero is her mom. Monty hero is his stepfather. I know his stepfather beat your mother, and to get the post. but let's decide the point.
That's a fun conversation.
But that's it. But the from an international point of view, I just want to share one final experience with you all before I go. I like to tell the story. I don't tell it often, but the highlight of my political career is that I had a personal 40 minutes audience with Nelson Mandela. Nobody in this country had that besides Jack Warner. Okay? And when Mr. Mandela came to Trinidad, I was in Mr. Manning's cabinet. I was Minister of Works at the time. And he was supposed to give a talk at the Center of Excellence that night because his wife had died the day before and he had to leave impromptu. Because at that point in time, he came here to lobby Jack Warner for South Africa to get a World Cup. That was 2010 World Cup. And the protocol was that a minister had to accompany him. So I accompanied him from the Trinidad Hilton to the Center of Excellence. So here am I, this little boy from Mayaro, now a minister in Trinidad, sitting down in the back seat of a car with Nelson Mandela. I could ask him anything, talk to him for half an hour. So I was a little intimidated initially. And then I asked him one question. I said, I know how much you all know African history, because I was in Africa for a while too, in an election. There were three countries actually that suffered apartheid, which is South Africa, Zimbabwe, which was Rhodesia at the time, and Southwest Africa, which is now Namibia. I had been a UN observer in Namibia, so I have experienced firsthand what apartheid was. I was a young person then. And Zimbabwe under Mugabe, took a particular course. They seized and expropriated all the lands from the people who robbed the natives of the land. Mr. Mandela took a different approach, where he had a reconciliation board or something like that he established, so that both whites and blacks could come together and discuss and chart the future in a peaceful way. So I said to him, I said, Mr. Mandela, why did you do that? I mean, there was so much injustice done to your people. Good. And he said, son, son, you all are leaders in your country. He said, but at the end of the day, the role of a government, the role of leaders, is when the people who support you, when they wake up in the morning, their children must have a school to go to, and they must have a job to go to. He said, if you cannot provide that, you have done nothing. So forget the cliche of all the talk about liberty and liberalization and freedom. At the end of the day, that is what freedom means. He said, and if I had gone the way of Zimbabwe, the South African economy would have collapsed. He said it will take 3 generations, I know, for black people to come on an even turf with whites. He said, but let us wait 3 generations and don't destroy it today. But so today, because of that man, who I had a conversation with, South Africa has the strongest economy in all of Africa. And the transition is taking place. For some people, it's taking place too slowly. But it is the only how it could have taken place. And a lot of people just bomb the gum about Mandela this and Mandela that. But very few people know at the level which I know how great that man is or was. Okay? So when you go to Nelson Mandela Park in St. James there, which used to be King George V Park, just remember that. Okay? So that's a unique story that I tell very few people. But I like the facial expression on the both of you. So that's why I'm sharing it. Okay,
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing with us. That was very enlightening.
Perfect. Over, Faith, thank you very much for leading this conversation. It has been fantastic. I think this entire conversation has been a great journey through our history, where we've seen the energy sector tied so closely to our development as a country. We've looked at where we are right now, our very real challenges that are in front of us right now, and where we can potentially go together as a country. So, as the conversation wraps up, I have one question for everyone, and by everyone I mean Uber and Faith, you as well. Um, so from this, from all that we've gone through today, what is one piece of advice that you would all give to everyone looking on at this conversation right now? And Mr. Minister, coming out from that really great story about Nelson Mandela, would you do the honors of kicking us off with that one piece of advice that you think is important for everybody looking on?
Well, I don't want to sound too arbitrary in what I have to say. I'm not specific, but the advice I want to give people is that you must have confidence in your future. You have must confidence in your personal future and confidence in the national future of Trinidad and Tobago. Because unless you want to migrate, your future is here in Trinidad. And you must have confidence in your personal future and by extension, your country's future. Nobody wants to go to America right now, you know. America is the hotspot of COVID. I know people who here now want to give up their green card, you know. Because if they go back, they can't come because they have the green card. Okay? So the world is cyclic. Everything is cyclicity. So you're great today and you're not so great tomorrow. Okay, but you were born in Trinidad. History put us here. Okay? History brought the East Indians, they brought the Africans, they brought the Caucasians. They kill out the Aborigines. That's the reality of our history. Chinese came and everybody come in, now Venezuelans come in. So the Venezuelan will one day become part of the Trinidadian culture because people migrate for various reasons. Every US president has Irish roots, from Kennedy to Biden to everybody. You know why? Because Ireland had a famine and the Irish went to America in droves in the latter part of the 19th century. Okay, so we are all in this space, this God-given space. Okay, we have to, I tell you all, not so much energy, but I represent the government. You must have confidence in your future. You must have confidence in your country. And you must do what is necessary to make that confidence reflect itself for a bright future for Trinidad and Tobago. You all are the next generation. Trinidad and Tobago has societal problems. There's the problems of income inequity. There's the rich and the poor. There's the urban youth. It's serious challenges. There's gangsterism, there's gunmanism. There's drugs, there's guns, there's racket. These are realities you all face. When you go to school, you see it. Okay, these are something that you come here and you talk about energy, and tomorrow you hear two shots sung outside your home. This is the life most urban youths have to live with. And that culture is migrating now, even to some of the rural districts in Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, then there's the ethnicity issue. Okay, it raises its ugly head during an election. Who is East Indian? Who is African? Who is white? Who is Syrian? Who is the 1%? Okay, we have to, you or the next generation, have to find solutions to these things. You know? You have to sit down and have reality talks, relationships you have. Okay, so you all have a lot of responsibility. Probably our generation didn't do as well as we should have to tackle some of these problems. But these are the problems, irrespective of the economy. How strong oil and gas is could cripple this country. That crime thing, easy thing, okay? And that ethnicity issue that pops its ugly head up occasionally in the country is something we have to deal with. You all know that, all right? So I just want to say, have confidence in your future and have confidence in your country's future and do whatever it takes to make that a reality. Okay? I will say no more again on this interview because it's almost 6 o'clock.
Excellent advice, Minister. Excellent advice. Madam PS, what about you? What advice do you have for everyone looking on?
So what I would say is, as I always say, there will always be something faster, newer, bigger, better, whether you're talking about phones, whether you're talking about cars, whether you're talking about clothes, right, or anything like that. So as a person, you have to know what you want. You have to be confident with what you have and be content at times, right, until you can do better. Right, so because there will be always something else as you purchase and you roll out of the showroom, there's something newer and better and bigger, right? So there's a level of contentment that you need to have while striving to do better. So I'm not saying that you settle, but you also have to know what you're working towards, right? And work towards that without necessarily looking at what the next person has, right? So that's just one thing. And I just want to leave you with our watchwords for the nations, which are not just words, but discipline, tolerance, and production. So live by those 3 words and it will go well with you.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful advice, Ms. Bradshaw-Niles. Monty, what about you? What is the advice that you have for everyone looking on?
Your mic is muted.
Yeah. Find your passion and pursue it relentlessly, because then you'll get that holistic view of life, right? Don't be afraid to trust your gut. Seek mentors throughout your life for various reasons. It may not be one person or 2 persons. And a softer point, help each other because a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And it's important that we all in the same boat. Well, the different analogies, but we are in Trinidad and Tobago together. We all have to lift each other up to deal with the issues that certainly the ministers raised. We can't sit in isolation as an island, so that's my parting words. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much. I will let Oba and Faith have the last word in this conversation. This has been our final episode of Heroes of Energy. And bet that we are going to take all the insights and information that has been given to us and help do something new and exciting in the future come next year. But Oba, Faith, what advice do both of you all have from your experience as young people, as the future of Trinidad and Tobago, being a part of these series? What advice do you have for everyone looking on?
Well, my advice would be keep fighting, and one day we'll all live harmoniously.
Well said. Well said. Well said.
My advice would be to follow your dreams. If you want something in life, you must go towards it and never give up.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you all very much for giving up your time today with us. Thank you for everyone who has been a part of this Heroes of Energy series. And thank you for everyone who's joined in on these Sunday sessions. As we go, from all of us here at the Heroes Foundation, we just like to wish everyone a very safe and a very happy Christmas. And we look forward to working with everyone in the new year as we continue to provide as many different opportunities as possible for our young people, the youth of Trinidad and Tobago, to be connected with opportunities and insights for their sustainable development. So thank you all very much and take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.